Greetings and welcome to Zord Planetary Space Program episode 9. We start off by finishing up some business from the last episode. Namely, we are returning the pusher back to Alpha Station for refueling and preparing for the next launch. And we are launching a tanker, which is going to just refuel the depots on Alpha Station. And this is just a regular tanker doing a regular ascent and a regular docking, so it's gonna be heavily cut down because you've seen this a million times. And really, it's very hard to keep things interesting when there's nothing interesting happening. And speaking of nothing interesting, we just dock it, transfer all the fuel, undock it, and yeah, it flies itself back into the Kerbin atmosphere and crashes. Meanwhile, on Minmus, our ship has arrived, and we're going to dock it to Beta Station. And this ship, if you remember, is a regular tanker with modular engines and a crew module in the front, plus that extra gizmo which has yet to be explained what exactly it's going to do. But anyway, we just circularize our orbit, and fortunately we end up in a completely okay place for doing the rendezvous. So we need not a lot of delta V, but we need quite a lot of time due to very, very low orbital velocity. While this is going on, the other ship, the Duna lander and small tanker, arrives at Minmus encounter, and we're going to do the same thing. This one is also going to dock at Beta Station, and due to the timing we have to have a much more aggressive orbit to do the rendezvous. And by the way, this is what I answer my friends when they ask me, what's that KSP thing? How does it work? And show them that picture. It seems very easy and user-friendly, doesn't it? Yeah. So we make our orbit, we set up our encounter, and now we have two ships coming in at the same time towards Beta Station. And it just so happens that these two rendezvous are going to occur quite close to each other. So you see the Duna lander coming in from its very elliptical orbit at the same time as this tanker is approaching from its circular orbit. So what we're doing when we get here, we detach the command module and the tanker flies in on its own. And this is going to dock and refuel Beta Station, and we're not going to use all of its fuel, so it's going to stay attached to Beta for now. And because it has a large docking port and the station is really just a tanker, we have to dock it along its axis, so it's just gonna make the station longer. I don't really like that solution, and I'm working on a way to fixing it. And the same thing goes here for the command module, which is not going to be docked here, but I'm putting it there for now because it's not going to be on the tanker anyway. And a little bit later the ship arrives. It has no crew, as you see, it's robotic, and we're just gonna do our approach as usual. And because this one has engines in the back, it's hard to find a docking place, so I'm gonna do one of these off-center dockings again. So we just dock with a small radial port to one of the station's small radial ports, and it's not as hard as it should be. This is one of the things I heard people say is really hard. But I learned to dock without the nav ball or anything. I started doing dockings in 0.15, yeah, version 0.15, way before docking was possible. So you did rendezvous, and then you like poked the ships with each other, and that was your docking. But it was a great way to learn things the hard way. So we refuel everything, and there's still fuel in the tanker, and we're gonna get rid of this gizmo because this one is not going any further out than Minimus. And since we don't have any service ship, we're going to have to use our command module for now. And we're going to stick it in carefully in here in the between the nuclear engines on the tanker. So with that thing attached, we undocked the crew module itself, and this is now going to transfer its crew over to the Duna lander. But since this is non-robotic, it doesn't have any probe cores, we're going to leave one guy, Bill, on board to fly this to its parking space. And the reason we have to do this particular task at all is because I didn't revise the design of the Duna lander after I had invented this system with a modular command module and, well, a more modular system for the ships. So now we are stuck with the Duna lander. There's no time to send another one, or well, I'm sticking to this one because I'm not going to go revise things that are still going to work, but we're going to have to bring the crew module along anyway. And we're going to park it in between the nuclear engines on the tanker, because this is the only place we can fit it. And yeah, we're not going to keep any crew in there. So Bill, close the lights before you leave. So that thing's going to be thoroughly irradiated. So no one's going to be in there until after the Duna mission have been completed. And he doesn't look too sad about being out in space on EVA. He's good because he's gonna spend a long time in space. Just saying. Yeah, it's just the design I would have brought if I would have been thoughtful enough to do it is a version that doesn't have a crew module on its own. It uses the modular crew module for its crew module, if you follow me, and that would have required a few less parts. But we're stuck with this, and we'll make it work. And I hope you notice I have done a switch in the modular engines. So the lander is equipped with nuclear engines, and its chemical engines that it brought is stuck on the side of the support tank. It's the same idea, it's the same concept as the Jovan Moon's lander, what you want to call it. It's a slightly different design, but it's the same principle. So this thing is fueled, crewed, it's got its engines now, and yeah, the time is now. So we're gonna leave. We're going to leave for Duna. And one more thing before we do it. Same thing as with the Jovan lander. We undock it and rotate the engines or the entire lander craft 45 degrees, or pi over 4 radians, if you will, to make it so that the craft can use its own nuclear engines, giving us a slightly higher thrust-to-weight ratio. And with this all done, we can finally get on our way. We activate all the engines, make sure the exhaust isn't cooking any part of the craft, and we are on our way. Now we have to coast to Kerbin periapse, and this is gonna take a while. So in the meantime, we are going to launch this thing, which is both a nuclear engine hub and a service ship destined for Beta Station. And the launch is uneventful, so we cut away to this part when we're doing our orbit insertion, which is a little more exciting. Because first we spend the fuel in the stage, so we open up the valves so we can use the service ship internal tanks, and that runs out. We're still not in orbit, so I detach the tank, fly the craft around, dock it again to the front. This exposes the service ship's own engines, which we activate and run with the fuel in the service ship itself. This puts us into orbit, but the periapse is still within the atmosphere. So we use RCS to fix the last bit, because it has a lot of RCS tanks and thrusters. After that, it's easy coasting just to get to the station. And when we get there, there's a lot of undocking and rearranging of the ship to make it fit in all the systems. We have to dock it, and we have to dock it to the pusher, and we sent out the system's own, the space station's own service ship to bring in the engine hub like this. And you've seen this plenty of times, so I cut most of it because it's not very interesting. So when we have docked everything, we've gotten rid of the old engine hub, we have refueled everything, we undock the service ship with all its components in this configuration so that it has senior docking ports on all ends, or both ends. And we undock our eminent and always useful pusher, which is going to take this to Minmus. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for this idea or this concept, because it's very useful to be able to send anything to anywhere in the Kerbin system, and really beyond. I just haven't done that yet. It's completely possible to send things due now or further away still with this pusher design. It's reusable and it's efficient as long as everything's free anyway. And yeah, it's very convenient not to have to worry about transfers, launchers and ships and stuff. You need to have cargo which has a docking port, and that's it. As long as it's less than hundreds of tons, it's not a problem. So it's the usual thing. You push it out, you accelerate it to Minmus orbit or Minmus encounter, and the pusher decelerates and comes back to Kerbin. This time nothing interesting happened between the time of the pusher undocking from its cargo and the pusher coming back to Kerbin, and that's like a day in game time. So we skipped here, and I put the periapps a bit too high up, which is uncharacteristic of me, but stuff like this happens. And so I have to use the engine power to bring the encounter to the proper place. And it was no extra challenges really, just bring it in and dock it. Refuel and wait for the next thing to happen. Next thing is this, which we have been waiting for, the launch, or well, the final leg of the Kerbin system journey part of the Duna ship, which is doing its ejection from the Kerbin system, which is surprisingly slow. You have to add like 250 meters per second, which is twice of that of Minmus circularization. And to that, we fly away from the Kerbin system. We are on our way. I will see you next time. Bye!